Good evening. Welcome to another episode of Relate to This. I am one of your hosts, Jay Tross. I'm sharing the stage with my friend, my buddy, Dr. Siegfried Howe, who is by all association, by all reports, a relationship coach and a relationship consultant. He is an awesome author, and he is out here living his life not just for himself, not just for his family, but he's living his life so that he's able to share what he's picking up as he goes through it. So, welcome once again, Dr. Howe, to this episode. How are you
Thank
on
you,
this
thank you.
evening?
Yeah, hey, I'm doing well, man. A little sleepy, but hey, I perk up when it comes to relationships and getting information out there to people.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Hey, we want to remind our listeners, our viewers, that our show is brought to us by, sponsored by MEI, Making Education Intentional, and we'll be talking about that throughout this show, throughout other shows that we do. We do a couple of other shows. We do a show called Awkward Situations. And we also just started a new show, Dr. Howe. A new show we just started. Your recipe or mine, your
Mm,
recipe
mm, mm.
or mine, and we just started that, so that should be coming out to our viewers real soon. So we don't have a lot of time tonight. We want to just get right into our subject matter. We want to get right into it. And so as we do that, we like to set the foundation. And I want to set the foundation with this question, Dr. Holland. Maybe you can expound on it. You can energize us. You can give us some statistics of really what's happening in the world of relationship. And so I have a question for you. And we had this question early on in our one of our first episodes, but I want to bring it back because I want us to dig a little deeper into it. Is why do relationships get stuck? Why is it that we kind of put on the brakes? What happens in our relationships that cause us to be at that like stuck level? Like we want to be in, we don't want to be out, but we're kind of stuck on the road. How can you kind of
Oh yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I'm gonna sum it up in one word: Disney. Disney gave us a false narrative, and they live happily ever after.
Wow.
And that to me is the summation of the problem. Disney did not take into consideration that these people grew up in different households. They grew up, a matter of fact, in a lot of Disney movies, you had a prince who grew up in a palace with a regular person who grew up poor. The mindset of a rich person and a poor person are totally different. The things that each person has to do. So, for example, Cinderella, if you look at the story with Cinderella, Cinderella was mistreated and abused not just by her mother, but by her siblings. And so she was overworked and abused. She got a chance to go to the palace, and the prince fell in love with her. And apparently, she's supposed to live happily ever after because of the whole shoe situation. But you don't take into consideration the fact that the prince has never lifted a hand at doing much of anything in his life. And so when they're together, what is he doing for her? And so it's still a one-sided situation. Let's look at it from another standpoint. I had an amazing high school religion and math teacher, and he went to DR, Dominican Republic, and he found a wife, and they did not speak the same language, but they struck up a relationship, got married, brought her back to England, and he was telling us that he had to say, hey, I can help with the chores. I can help do this. I can help do that. I don't want you to be doing all this. But that was part of her culture.
Wow.
And so something as simple as she is willing to do all the work, but he's willing to help out. You know, and so, like we said earlier, a lot of relationships start out selfish.
Right.
I like something you do, have, or enthralled. You know, whether it's your persona, whether it's your esteem, whether it's your cultural standing or your socioeconomic status. I like your body. I like your conversation. You got all the curves in the right way. You speak nice. You belong to a nice family. And so we're going after people for selfish reasons, and we maintain those selfish reasons. And so we do the minimum amount trying to get the maximum out. And over time, the relationship starts to struggle because one or both individuals, they often feel like they're not getting what they want or need out of the relationship. And if you have communication problems and you don't know how to talk to each other, you don't know how to be transparent, you don't know how to be honest about your feelings, then you say stuff like, well, they should know me by now.
Right.
You can live in the same house with somebody for 10 years and still don't know them if they do not tell you what's in the deep, darkest secret, corners of their mind. If they don't tell you, hey, this is not working for me, that's not working for me, well, he should have known or she should know by now. No, open your mouth and say something. This is not a Jedi mind trick. Tell me what you want. I tell you what I want, and we meet somewhere in the middle.
Right.
And so the problem arises where people are selfish or practicing selfishness when they need to be practicing selflessness by giving value and service to each other, identifying what your spouse or partner needs and providing some of those things on a regular basis, not just when they fuss at you. I mean, I know men, I know I'll fall into that trap where if my wife says, hey, you know what, I asked you to do this last time we talked, you said you're going to get better at this, and I'll jump up and I'll do it for 2 weeks.
Right.
But what can I do to make it part of my weekly schedule or routine? And do I love her enough to not forget anymore and just work on doing it?
Right.
Because there are a lot of things that we add to our lifestyle because it's important to us. Why not put some of the needs of your partner in that list?
Yeah, I like that, and I like how you actually started out with the one word. Disney,
Disney.
and I can give you a couple of other one words. Hollywood.
Yeah.
There's that feel. It's this love story. Happily ever after, and it starts when you're a kid. You read those books, right? You read those fairy tales, and it all ends with happily ever after. And so, young ladies, when they're preparing to get married, they always say, "I want, I want the princess wedding, and I want this," and you get this false sense. And so when the Disney comes off of Cloud Nine and the Hollywood comes, they turn the cameras off. These people go back to their own personal lives, their characters.
Yeah.
They're not real. They're not really walking you through what it really and truly looks like. And we get caught up in the in those shows, those love stories and the romance and how they start off together and then they break up and they go their separate ways, and then they all of a sudden 20 years later find each other and oh my gosh, we were meant to be. And so we get caught up in that type of scenario where when we get stuck, it's like, oh my gosh, what happened?
This is not working.
Part two. No, part two. We need part two because something happened. And this was the cliffhanger. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so we sometimes we get caught, and like you just said, it's not working. And now we're seeing this new thing, right? It's not that we're just getting divorced. We're getting divorced because we're going separate ways in life now. You know
Yes.
what I mean? That's the new thing now. It used to be you got divorced, the person was cheating, or we
Beating
just
you
did,
or
yeah,
something.
something, we're talking about the whole Hollywood people now, right?
Hmm.
They start using this whole we're going separate ways, and
Irreconcilable differences.
yeah. And so what I want to do now, they don't want to do. So we thought better that we just split up and live our own life. So now Hollywood couples are doing it. So now we're regular folk are doing it.
Hmm.
Oh well, we fell out of love, and we've already discovered that love is not the love can't take you through. You know
Love
what I
is
mean?
not enough.
Right. It can't bring you all the way through. And so, we fell out of love. So once you fall out of love, then what's next?
So once you fall out of love, that's when you start to do some soul searching.
Mm-hmm.
Do I have the right person? Can they fulfill my needs? Are they willing to compromise? Do I think I could spend the rest of my time with them? And so the second stage, so the first stage is the romantic stage,
Mm-hmm.
and it usually lasts between 7 months to about 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody, most couples can last about 2 years. It's somewhere around the third year mark that people start to get a little jumpy, because now I realized, okay, you go to the bathroom and it stinks,
Mm-hmm.
and I gotta come in there behind you. Or I remember when I first got married with my wife, the thing was she used to squeeze the toothpaste in the center of the
Mm-hmm.
tube, and I used to squeeze it from the bottom. That was my pet peeve with her. Her pet peeve with me was I used to leave the countertop wet. And they're little things, but we had big arguments about them because we were trying to maneuver living together
Right.
and being married. And so we found a compromise. Every house that we got had 2 sinks in the master bathroom. Don't have to deal with that problem anymore. Now, I don't know if you've noticed this, but a lot of multi-million-dollar houses now have his and her bathroom
Right. Right.
in the master suite.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So that solves a lot of problems right there. But you need to be in a certain socioeconomic status to even
So
have that right there.
so based on what you just said, which was very interesting, you kind of said something you might not know if you kind of said it right. Is you said in the multi-million-dollar homes, they have the his and hers. So those who are not, those who are in the middle class and then in the lower class, and so they are forced to
Work it out.
work it out. You see what
Or
I'm saying?
yeah.
And I don't want to use the word force, but now you're, those who are at that other level, their workout was I'll put money into making you happy. And
Mm-hmm.
when, as we have seen, when the money runs out,
Yeah.
then they're trying to pick up the pieces, but it's too hard for them because they didn't work for it. I'm
Yeah.
just saying in the sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
They chose money over really going to war and battle to try to keep the relationship together. And so the question I have for you now, based on that, is it worth going to war and battle to try to keep the relationship together?
Yeah, it depends on what you're trying to get out of the relationship. So, for example, if you're in it for the right reasons to start with, if you choose the right person, and if you're committed to that person, then it is worth not going to war,
Mm-hmm.
but going to the round table. I don't know if you remember the story about King Arthur and the round table, but the reason why the table was round and not rectangular is there was no head to the table.
Mm-hmm.
And another thing that I want to bring out is when money is a factor, whoever makes the most money tends to get away with the most stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we go from selfishness to selflessness,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of the money situation, we're now looking at it from what do you need in order to be happy and to fulfill your life-given purpose.
Right.
See, if I'm helping you I can't make you happy.
Right.
But what I can do is to provide as many resources as I have, whether it is mental help, physical help, emotional help, my skills, my gifts, my talents,
Right.
to help you and guide you fulfill your life-given purpose. Not to do it for you, but to provide that value that you need in order to move forward with a productive life.
Right.
And by proxy, you're supposed to do the same for me.
Right.
And so the first thing you have to do, you ask what's next. The first thing you have to do, like I said, you got to do a self-evaluation. What do I want from a relationship? What am I trying to achieve in life? What is my mission statement? Where am I trying to go? What am I trying to accomplish by the time I die or expire? Once I can write that down, you can write yours down, and then we can look and see how we can meet somewhere in the middle and help each other. Because if we're going in similar paths, then we're a good match for each other. But
Right.
if I'm going left and you're going right, I chose and committed to the wrong person.
Right. Yeah.
And so then it becomes a fight because you have irreconcilable differences. But if we both love each other and we're both willing to put the time and energy in when love runs out, and when I say love runs out, I mean when love is no longer enough, then we devise strategies to help each other,
Right.
to meet each other's needs so that we can move forward.
Right. 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 Wow. Wow. I mean, it's and when I said war,
Do you remember that show from the 80s, War the Roses?
War the Rose. That's the only thing I thought in my head when I said war. I was like, well, we don't want to go that far. But yeah. So all right. So my next question I have for you, and it has to do with the intimacy. How do you maintain intimacy physically, emotionally, and spiritually over the long haul? How do you do that? How do you maintain that over the long haul?
All right, let me tell you this, man. My dad told me early in my marriage that the bedroom is the last stop in intimacy and romance. People think that sex and being intimate will solve all your problems. If I'm putting my hands on you, intimacy is not going to help. If I'm backbiting you and stabbing you in the back, intimacy is not going to help. If I'm non-loyal and cheating on you, intimacy is not going to help. And so it could be a Band-Aid, but it's not going to help. And so to me, you have physical, mental, emotional, spiritual intimacy. Have you ever seen like an old couple like in the 80s and 90s and they're looking at each other and they're giddy and they look all romantic, but you know that they ain't doing much physical.
Right. Well,
well, they're still alive, so we hope we know they're not doing that much. But at the end of the day, what I'm trying to allude to is it's emotional intimacy.
Right.
They spend quality time together. It's not about the amount of time you spend together, but it's about what you're doing when you spend time together. And so here's some of the things you can do. So when you go to a restaurant, and next time you go to a restaurant, look around. How many couples you see on their cell phones? You're supposed to be on a date, but each person on their own cell phone. That's one way that you pulling into intimacy away from each other.
Right.
If you're going to take time to get out of the house, might as well make it constructive. Talk to each other, have a conversation. Before you go out, have a list of 10 questions that you want to ask your partner. And if both people have a list, then it's not a boring conversation.
Right.
Like let's have some objectives when we go out. Let's be, let's try to understand a little bit more about each other. So I've been looking at you for the last 2 weeks and since our last date, and I want to know X, Y, Z.
Right.
I should know your favorite color. I should know your favorite books. I should know your biggest fear in life. I should know your purpose and your goals for your life. And if you don't know those things, then you need to be asking those questions.
Yeah.
And then how can I assist you next week with achieving your goals? What can I do to better help you? Or maybe every 2 weeks. Now, I came across this thing. This is not my method, but it's called the 2-2-2 method. Every 2 days, you stop and have some deep conversations. So you need every 2 days, spend some time getting to know each other a little bit more. And you can amp it up, but you can stretch it out to every 3-4 days. But the key is consistency. Whatever you pick, when that day comes, that's what you're doing. And you're deliberate about it. You do your homework so that you're ready when it comes. You don't say, "Oh crap, here we go again." No, be intentional about it. So every 2 days, so let's pick at 2-2-2 instead of 3-3-3 or 4-4-4. So every 2 days we stop, we connect, and you say stuff like, "Hey, am I meeting your needs? Is there anything I need to work on? What can I do better?"
Wow.
Okay, so we're stopping to meet each other's needs and talking, the communication, instead of just communicating when we're upset with each other, or communicate as I'm in and out the door, or I'm leaving and you're coming in, or whatever.
Right.
And then the next two is every 2 weeks you go out on a date. And that's when you can have those questions that we talked about. So every 2 days, you're meeting up to talk. It could be in the bed, it could be in the bathroom, it could be on the couch, it could be anywhere. Just make sure you're not on your phone watching TV or whatever. It is intentional time to connect.
Right.
Every 2 weeks you go out, and it could be dating. It could be like playing miniature golf, but you're talking with each other. Just go on a date night every 2 weeks. And then every 2 months, you spend an overnight without the kids at a hotel. You spend intimate time without the kids anywhere around. You get to bond and connect with each other, and you get to learn about each other. I found out so much about my wife during the pandemic that I fell in love with her all over again. The woman is into history. She did not like history when she was in high school, but she developed a love for history now. And the stuff that she's into, man, she's found all of these shows and she's watching them. And I just get caught up in some of the stuff that she, and so now I'm finding out a whole new side of her. And this is 30 years in.
Wow.
If you look, you can always find something.
Right. Right.
But you got to be willing to look. You got to be willing to learn. You got to be willing to ask questions. And she's finding out stuff about me too. Now we can do a fourth two. Every 2 years, you go on a major vacation. Just you without the kids, you and her without the kids, or you and your partner without kids. Just go away and just discover each other. Do something exciting together. Doesn't have to be exciting. Doesn't have to be expensive, but just get away. And so that's how you get the physical stuff going, because now the relationship isn't about sex.
Right.
It's about getting to know you, getting to understand you, getting to help you on a deeper level. And the spiritual part is, if you connect with them on the spiritual level, that means that you throw God in there, and you like, what, God has put us together. Let's figure out why.
Right.
What's the purpose for me and you being together? What can I learn from this? And then emotionally, like I said, when you get to learn each other, and it's not selfish intentions, it's selfless intentions, then the emotional is taken care of also.
Right. Yeah.
So that's how you sustain a relationship over a long period of time. You be intentional about feeding the physical, emotional, spiritual, intellectual selves.
Wow. That's one of those things, you package it and then you unpackage it and you break it down. I like the 2-2-2 method, 2-2-2-2-2.
Yeah. Or it could be 3-3-3-3.
You can keep going, you can take away, and you kind of maintain that intimacy physically, emotionally, and spiritually. And that final one we want to dig into is, we talked about maintaining the intimacy. Now, the backbone to that is, how do you nurture romance? Because it's totally different. How do you nurture the romance in a long-term relationship? Now, watch this. We're not necessarily just talking about marriage, but we're talking about girlfriend, boyfriend type of relationships. How do you nurture romance and let's define romance, because some people get a little confused.
Mhm.
Just like intimacy, like your dad said, it's the last, it
Last
ain't the
step.
first, right? So romance can be taken so many different type of ways, because for women, romance is the little things that you do.
Hmm.
That was, how they say it, that was so romantic.
Yeah.
And you saying to yourself, well, all I did is open the door for you. And I say, oh, that was so romantic. Well, all I did is go and get the fork out of the drawer, whatever. So talk to us. How do you nurture romance?
Okay, so first of all, I like the fact that you said all I did was open the door, all I did was get flowers, all I did was this, that, and the other. And that goes to the Hollywood has given us this thing that women are hard to please and impossible to please.
Mm-hmm.
I beg to differ.
Correct.
It's difficult, but it's not impossible.
Mm-hmm.
And Gary Chapman, he wrote a very awesome book called The Five Love Languages.
Mm-hmm.
And the touchy-feely, their acts of service, affirmations, and so on. But I know what my love language is. And I did the test with my wife. And I did an experiment this summer. I told my wife, "Oh man, I love the food you made for me, man. You really put your foot in it." And for 2 weeks straight, I thanked her and praised her for the things she was doing for me. And she was like, "Yeah, fine, yeah, no problem." But when I said, "Oh baby, I cleaned the garage and then I washed the car and stuff," she's like, "Oh my goodness, you did all that." And she lit up, she was bubbling and all that stuff because her love language is acts of service.
Mm.
And so the biggest thing you have to do, or the biggest thing you have to remember when trying to keep that romance going, is figuring out what your partner likes, wants, or desires.
Mm-hmm.
Learn their love language, learn your love language, and learn to be bilingual. And then you go and study, what does that personality find romantic?
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's gender specific or not. Find out, what does a touchy-feely person or kinesthetic love language, what do they find romantic? And so it could be a massage after a long day, a massage at the end of the week. People whose love language are gifts. It's not necessarily the price of the gift. You can make a card and you're like, "Oh my goodness, you put so much time and energy into it." And you can pay $100 for a store-bought card and they're like, "Yeah, okay." Because if you have a lot of money and you get them a cheap card,
mm-hmm.
that's different than somebody who's broke getting them a card that costs them a little bit more. You understand what I'm saying?
Right.
And so sometimes the gift must match the pocket, but sometimes the gift should come from the heart. If you, let's say my wife's into history,
mm-hmm.
and I find a book that really talks about Henry VIII, who she loves studying about Henry VIII, or Anne Boleyn, or Mary Queen of Scots, and I find a first edition that breaks down something that they did, and I get that for her, it's going to blow her mind.
Right.
Because the acts of service is, I went out of my way and out of my regular schedule and routine to find something that she probably could not find.
Right, yeah.
So that makes it worth it. So how do you keep the romance going? You find out what that person finds romantic. You find out their love language. Another thing that you can do is, there's also the 5 languages of apology.
Mm-hmm.
Learn how to say, "I'm sorry, I messed up." Learn how to take the blame. Learn how to fess up. Instead of throwing blame, take the blame, move on. A lot of times we hinder our romance because we hold on to stupid stuff.
Right, yeah.
We forgive what we don't forget. What's the point of forgiving if you're not going to forget with it? The Bible says that God takes our or sins and drop them in the deepest part of the ocean. The deepest part of the ocean is 7 miles deep. We can only get as far as 5 miles down. Now, I'm not saying there's actual sins down there, but what I'm saying is that man can't even get as far as God says our sins are. And so he's forgetting them. God doesn't come up and say, hey, you know what? You remember you did this when you were 5? Okay, so
you owe me.
Yeah, I'm time to pay the piper, you know. And then the next thing is they found that when you refuse to forgive someone, not only are you holding them hostage, but you hold your development, your physical and, well, your emotional and intellectual development, you hold that hostage because you have that person renting space in your head. That person may not even remember what they did to you, but you're still stuck in that spot, not being able to move on. And so that can also hinder romance. When I'm holding on to everything that you've ever done wrong, and I'm sitting waiting for you to mess up again.
Wow.
Versus sitting, waiting, and trying to find ways to love you better and help you more.
Wow. Wow. Listen, man. I mean, you definitely have unpackaged a whole lot, especially and you know, we opened up with the fact of, you know, how do relationships get stuck, but then we gave some tips about intimacy and about romance that will get you out of the mud, out of the clay, and into a more healthier relationships. Relate to this. This is what we are bringing to you. We're relating to the things that we have been through and that we have seen others go through, and then we're passing it right along. So we hope that you not only grab some of this, but you put something in the chat and say, listen, I have a question about this, or I'm going through this. Where can I go? Where can I get help? And so,
and not only that, if you find this beneficial, you find this helpful,
share it.
And you can think of anyone that you think can also benefit from this, pass the link on, pass the love on, so that as many people as possible can benefit from this, you know.
Absolutely, absolutely. Just press that share button and let's make it happen. Let's share this with somebody. Listen, we have had a wonderful evening with you all, and we look forward to you catching us on our next episode of Relate to This. Have a good evening.
Goodbye, everyone.